Alright, so this thing has served me pretty well over the years. CFD-S01 CD radio, and obviously could also play cassettes as well. And then, had it for several years, and it lasted a very long time, but it barely works anymore now. And unfortunately, it's like multiple things are going wrong at once. Like on tape mode, there's a loud hum in the speakers when the motor's actually running, and the tape also runs slow. And then for the radio, it's barely picking up a station, and the other problem is that it's misreading which buttons I'm pressing, which makes it kind of hard to use anymore. And same thing with the CD, it's misreading what buttons I'm pressing. It still reads the CD okay, but with multiple problems, I'm suspecting maybe a voltage problem, but I don't know. I have opened this thing up before, and it's not easy to get to things when you're trying to probe things with the power on. So it's like when I took it apart last time, it was like I had to resolder or reseat the ribbon cable going to the CD movement, and then the CD started working again when it wasn't working before. But now it's messing up again, and it looks like a more like a bigger problem that I'd have to probe things with the power on, and this design, as you'll see, just doesn't really lend itself very well to that. So I'm gonna basically tear it down and non-destructively as possible, but I don't really care to actually reassemble it. What I'm gonna do is take out what I can tell is still good, and figure out if anybody wants the good parts. One thing to be careful of when you first start separating the two halves after taking all the screws out, don't just pull them apart too fast in case there's any cables between them. So you might have to get creative and come up with a way to unplug the connectors or move the cables around so that they don't get pulled too hard in the wrong direction when you remove the back cover. Alright, so one thing about this particular design is that the belt is going to be a bit tough to replace if you have this unit and your belt is worn out for the cassette player, because you pretty much have to take everything else out in order to get to it. But this wasn't a super expensive model even when it was new. So I mean, it probably would have cost more. I hate to say it, but that once they get a working, durable design that sells, I mean, time is money for engineering. So yeah, I mean, there probably were other designs that were more accessible, but they probably cost more because they have to spend more time doing it, and they've got to have more connectors and fewer soldered in things, and the connectors would have to be robust enough to handle a little gentle knocking and nudging of the boombox, and for some models maybe they would survive even more rigorous ones. Alright, so I went ahead and just after I separated the two halves, I just went ahead and unscrewed all this, and then here comes this board, which just has the battery contacts, and that's it. And then the transformer slash plug board, which also has the fuse. Yes, there's a capacitor on there. It's not a high voltage cap, so if you're taking apart some old radio stereo thing and you've determined it not to be worth fixing, one thing that might be worth saving is the transformer, because a brand new one does still cost a fair amount these days, and the transformer itself is rarely the problem. And most of the time you'll know what fuse to put in, because as long as it's a device like that's UL listed and it really is made by the company stamped on the front, chances are the fuse will already be the right rating, so you won't have to figure it out for yourself as you would if you bought a transformer. Alright, so this is probably just as good a time as any to mention that a lot of times these old boom boxes, radios, whatever, that had batteries, that thing at the socket that looks like a latch, that's basically a switch that disconnects the batteries when you put the AC plug into the socket. That's important because you wouldn't want to charge alkaline batteries that are in there. And if you happen to put rechargeable batteries in there, you would still need a control circuit of some sort to limit the charge current and do it safely. And the board also includes the bridge rectifier, which is not a dedicated bridge rectifier, it's just 4 diodes. And that's pretty much it. There's that one filter cap on there, but most of that's on the main board. Unfortunately, I did not see any bulging capacitors on the main board, because that's one thing that if I found something that was like, aha, that looks suspicious, and it was easy to reach, maybe I would fix it after all, but unfortunately that doesn't appear to be the case. There is something over here close enough to that big filter cap right there that has, this is a heat sink going on this through-hole chip over here, so once I get to there, I'm going to see if I can get the heat sink off and see what chip it is, just out of curiosity. Okay, I think it's a RF shield, so that's probably something related to the radio reception. Obviously some kind of coil, and then a turnable thing in there. There's another 3-pin thing on a heatsink. And so there's a fair amount of surface mount stuff in this boombox, but there's still some through hole. So yeah, kind of a mix between the two. So, you know, the older ones would have been more through hole, so those would have been bigger, but probably easier for most people to fix. But, you know. Alright, so see how the connector says L and R? It led right to the speakers, and I followed the traces and found that that is the amplifier chip that drives the speakers. So I thought maybe it was voltage because that big filter cap is right there. See, this plug goes, so Q something like, so on this model, ICs are just labeled IC. Sometimes they're labeled I, other times they might be labeled U for some reason. Alright, so this whole top section where the CD movement and most of the buttons are, looks like it should just come out, but it's being held on the right side by this thing. Or actually, it would be the left side if the radio was facing front. Alright, so these interchangeable bit screwdrivers are pretty useful, and they will help a lot in the field. Unfortunately, if you have something that's kind of in a recessed position, like that one, you do need a regular screwdriver of sorts that's, like, as opposed to an interchangeable one, because interchangeable ones will usually have a fat thing leading up to where the tip changes. So yeah, see how this is bigger than this? This one wouldn't fit. And when you've opened the player up and you find that it's growing hair inside, that's when you know it's old. So, if your cassette player is running a little too fast or a little too slow, but the speed is steady, so it's not fluttering, it's just a little bit out of tune, you see that little hole on the motor there that has like sort of a rubber thing with a slot in it? That is where a flathead screwdriver can go in and adjust whatever controls the speed. Because the terminals on the motor are on a circuit board, I'm assuming it's probably just a voltage regulator that's inside the motor case. So when the player has mechanical controls like this, there's going to be a start switch somewhere. So on this player, it's an exposed pair of leaf contacts. I'll just press the play button right here. And now the contacts are closed. And so I just pressed fast forward, or was it rewind? Doesn't matter. The contacts are still closed, and I hit stop. It pops up. The contacts are now open, so the motor would stop. So if you have a player where the button clicks into place, but it doesn't actually turn, that might be your problem right there. It might be that contact, or part of the mechanism that presses the contact. Speaking of the mechanism, sometimes I like to refer to it as the movement, like especially when it's a frame that you can separate from the case and it comes apart from the main board and other parts of the player. So that, or it's a boombox that does more than one thing, so that right there would be the CD movement. Minus the other stuff that's currently attached to that part of the case, that is. Alright, next I'm going to unscrew the cassette movement, or cassette mechanism from its place, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so the actual door itself, like this part, is attached to the front panel, but the actual lock is a little hook in the cassette movement that goes down when you press the stop eject button. In a multifunctional boombox, most of the time the board that is stuck to the back of the cassette movement is going to have the preamps for the head and the recording amplifier, and any AC or DC bias setup would be attached to here as well. And that's because when you run the wires a short distance, there's less opportunity for interference to get in. Which, because tape signals are relatively weak when they come straight from the head, interference is a bigger issue than with the preamplified audio signal going to the player's audio board, or the motherboard, depending on the design. This one kind of just has a motherboard. So, alright, so I got the door off. This spring went over in that corner and pressed against the door on the left-hand side. Or, yeah, that'd be the left-hand side when you're looking at the player. And then on the right-hand side, from the user's perspective, there was this gear where the teeth lined up with that on the door. This was how the thing would do a soft opening or soft eject, so that it didn't just slam open, because that seemed a bit unpleasant and jarring to people who were using it. It wouldn't damage the tape, but it's like just, you know, part of the user experience. They had the nicer ones. Occasionally they would even advertise soft eject on the front panel as though it were a extravagant feature or something like that. So yeah, so this gear just, you know, you can feel resistance when you turn it, and that's about it. So yeah, I'm just going to sell the entire movement, buttons and all, on eBay. and include the screws as a courtesy to anyone who's ever tried to DIY repair something has probably lost a screw at some point in their life. So yeah, then the door and the spring and the soft eject gear thingy, I'll sell those separately. Then I'm going to take the speakers out and probably sell those as a pair, but, you know, very, very low starting bid, so that it's like, you know, like 50 cents or something for each thing I'm selling, so that, you know, like they may just end up paying more for the shipping cost and the box that I send it in, if anything. So, well, the shipping cost would be the lower end, because I'd want to break even on that. So, anyway. Alright, so once you take the 4 screws out of this cover thingy, it comes out and the ribbon cables from the CD movement pass through this thing. So you just have to be careful not to snag them or anything. It was taped down, so you'll just have to peel that off. And then the movement's right there. So you might think there's more screws, but let's see. Let's see if they'll come out. Yeah, it's held in with these 4 rubber grommets, so that shields the movement from vibrations, so that it lasts longer in a portable device than it would if it was screwed directly to the chassis. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And we just want to make sure the lens doesn't get damaged, so I'll just have to keep that in mind when I'm packing this part up. And because I have heard of the laser itself being a bit static sensitive compared to other things, I went ahead and put it in an ESD bag just for good measure, because I am going to ship it to someone if anybody buys it, and hope that it actually works for them. So anyway, yeah, and the starting bid's going to be almost nothing. It's basically going to, like, you know, they're mostly going to be paying the shipping cost if they go with the starting bid. So yeah, it'll be the cassette door with the spring and the soft eject thing. It'll be the speakers, the cassette movement, and the CD movement, along with the transformer on the board. And yeah, that'll be what I actually put up for sale.